Inshallah, tonight we will cover Surah Al-Nahl. Surah Al-Nahl. So this is the 16th surah in the Quran, and it has 128 verses. 128 verses. So it's pretty lengthy. The surah is pretty lengthy. However, it's Meccan surah. It's a Meccan surah. So, like I said, it's very long, but it was not revealed in Medina. It was revealed in Mecca. Now, one of the interesting things about the surah, along with obviously many interesting things, is that it has some commands and prohibitions in the surah. So this is something that you don't really expect in Meccan surahs. So that typically you would see this in the Madani surahs, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, okay, do this, don't do this. Here are things that you should engage in, here are things that you should stay away from. This is primarily things, these were commands given to the Muslims in Medina by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when the Prophet had already migrated. So when the Muslim society was already established, now you can tell them, okay, here's how you should go about living your lives. But if there's no Muslim society, then obviously, what's the point in having very complex inheritance laws when Muslims are not even able to have a masjid? Okay, so this at that time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, in Mecca, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving the Prophet and the believers, very general commands, very, things that are strengthening their iman, and things that were, rectifying their character, turning them into good people, and then good believers. Because remember, these people, they had just left an age of Jahiliyyah, right? Zaman al-Jahiliyyah, they had just left the age of Jahiliyyah, they had just left this period of ignorance, of darkness, where they were engaged. Many of them were engaged in the things that the people of Makkah were engaged in. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is really, purifying their past deeds and their past, mentality, their way of thinking, their actions, habits that they had built over decades, because this is the life that they have lived. And now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is changing that by way of giving them, some of these are very broad guidelines, and some of them are very firm commands from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He uses very strong language. He subhanahu wa ta'ala uses strong language. So we'll get into that in one or two verses of this surah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about halal and haram as well. Now, first let's talk about the name of the surah. The name of the surah is An-Nahl. An-Nahl, it refers to the honey bee. It means the bee. So it's named after the honey bee, obviously. And there is a verse in the surah. It's a very, very straightforward verse. It's a very beautiful verse as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the honey bee, and He talks about the way that bees are. The way that they operate, the way that they live their lives. And there's a very beautiful hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he analogizes between a bee, a honeybee, and between a believer, a mu'min. And it's incredible, the Prophet ﷺ's depth and his vision in the way that he's able to make a parallel between the two. And I'm not going to get into the whole, honeybee and all of their the lives that they live, and the jobs and responsibilities that they carry out, even though it's very complex. I'm sure that you've seen, I think recently, in the past couple of years, there's been a lot of these news articles and people kind of panicking that bees are dying out, and this is very, very bad news. Obviously, if we lose the honeybees because we need them, and they're very crucial and critical asset for our survival, for the species, for the human species as well. So I'm not going to get into that. However, we'll make mention of that verse inshallah in a little bit. So this is one of the names of the surah, An-Nahl. Another name of the surah is An-Ni'am. An-Ni'am, Nun Ayn Mim. So this is the plural of Ni'mah. The plural of Ni'mah. Ni'mah is a blessing. So Ni'am are many, many blessings. Now, in this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the blessings that He has given us, which we don't have control over. So some other blessings that, we might, for example, it's like, I have a car, I have a house, I have a job, I have this, I have kids. Okay, these are things that, Allah has given me ability, yes, but these are things that I went down and I got. Like, I worked hard for it, and definitely Allah helped me, but these are things that I, was able to earn. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now He brings, on the other hand, He brings all of these things which you and I don't have control over, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us from His own mercy, from His blessings and His fadl, from His bounties and His generosity. So this refers, of course, all to the beauty of nature, as well as to a lot of the animals that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made musakhar for us. He has made subservient to you and I, and He has made them fulfilling of our needs. So these angels these animals, they fulfill our needs. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings a very, very strong ayah where He talks about the milk of a cow. And He talks about how this milk, it comes between all of these impurities in the body of that cow. It comes between blood, it comes between excrement, it comes between all of these organs in its body, and somehow it managed to come out pure, and it comes out, in a way that quenches the thirst of the one who drinks it. I'm sure that all of us have, milk in our refrigerators, right? And I don't know very many of you. I definitely would not drink milk that was synthesized in a lab. I mean, personally, I would just stay away from it, just because. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, look, this would you be able to do something like this? Would you be able to make this pure fluid, this pure liquid come out of this animal, and then you make use of it the way that you do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said this is just a single blessing that He has given us, and of course all of the others that He mentioned in this surah as well. So this is one of the lenses that we should put on before we go into the surah. When we start reading the surah and we see Allah mentions this and He mentions this and He mentions all of these things about nature and animals and whatever else, we should think that, okay, I don't have any control over this. Like, where did this come from? I have no ability over this. And yet Allah has given us, not chimpanzees or not lions and leopards and ostriches and elephants. He hasn't given them, He hasn't given them sultana. He has not given them ability and milkiya over them. He has not given them kingship or kingdomship over them. He has made us, the alphas. He has made us the dominant species on the face of this planet. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done that. And He has told us, explicitly, very clearly, that look, we have done all of this for you so that you can fulfill your mission in life. Now, your mission in life is not to go about, getting lost in all of the pleasures and fun that is out there. It's to make use of the resources, definitely, enjoy yourself, no doubt. But that's not your mission in life. That's not your purpose in life. Your purpose in life is to engage in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is to recognize that you're here for a reason. Okay, to understand that, okay, I'm here, and I didn't just come by accident. It didn't just happen by accident that I am a dominant species here. I am, the species that has the ability to reason, and I have an intellect, and I can think for myself, and I know, I think, therefore I am, all of these things. That when you realize this and you understand this, okay, there must be a higher purpose to it. There must be some kind of wisdom behind my creation. So now, what is that purpose? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala demonstrates for us, or He explicitly tells what that purpose is. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created mankind and jinn except so that they may worship me. That's it, that's your purpose. So that you spend this life making use of the resources that Allah has made available to you to worship Him, so that you can meet Him in the afterlife. So let's go into some of the verses in this surah. Now, this is a very lengthy surah. As I mentioned, it's 128 verses, so we won't go into all of them. There are some other prophets mentioned as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He makes mention of Ibrahim alayhi salam at the very, very end. So this could, and at the very end there is an ayah which I'll go into just a little bit, where it could be, and according to some scholars, it refers to a time of an event. It refers to an event that happened during the time of the Prophet's life when he was in Medina. We'll talk about that in a bit. So one verse that I wanted to talk about was a very common verse that I think most of us have already memorized at this point. It's a verse that we hear every Friday. It's a verse that we hear Yawm Jum'ah. Is when the Khatib, he will say that إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرْكُمْ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ. So that what he says, the Imam says, it comes directly from this surah. And however, he adds a little bit of a dhamir, he has a little pronoun, because the verse itself is إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى. So I just stopped about halfway through, so I can talk about the three things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded in this verse, and then the other three things that Allah has prohibited from. So let's talk about the three things He has commanded. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded al-adl. Al-adl is justice. So this means, obviously, not just doing the right thing, but, taking others to task if they do the wrong thing. The Prophet ﷺ, he has a very, harsh warning. He says that the people of Bani Israel, there's a group of Bani Israel who came generations ago, and these people, they live their lives in such a way that when the powerful, the rich, and the wealthy, and the influential, when they would do something wrong, they would not be taken to task. They would not be held accountable. But when the lower rungs of society, those who didn't have that much popularity or power or influence, when they did something wrong, they were immediately brought in front of a judge, and they were punished for whatever it is that they did. So they let the powerful ones go, and then the weak ones and the ones who were downtrodden in society, they were immediately grabbed. So the Prophet ﷺ says that this, was one of the primary reasons for the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala befalling that group of people. And He says that, I promise you by the one who holds my soul in his hand. And the Prophet ﷺ, so this is a qasam that he's making. He's also making a qasam. And he says that if Fatima, this is the most beloved daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, he says, if Fatima commits a crime, then I will hold her accountable. If Fatima herself commits a crime, I will definitely hold her accountable. So this is, the justice of Islam. that, oh, well, you know what, she's the Prophet's daughter, so let's, or the Prophet ﷺ, he decides to bend some rules or something. Nabi ﷺ never bent a rule for the sake of, even his daughter, Nabi ﷺ says, no, we're not going to bend rules here, because how is that justice? How is that fair? Where is the equality in that? So, this is a prohibition from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was, of course, the paragon of everything that was correct and moral and upright. So, this is the first thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands. And the second thing he commands is al-ihsan. يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ. So, ihsan, we talked about this in Surah Yusuf. We talked about it in Surah Yusuf, the Prophet says that أَن تَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ. Where you worship Allah as if you can see Him. You worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if you can see Him. So, this is not, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving this command in Makkah. Okay, so he's saying that, these are things you need to do in Makkah. Well, the Muslims were not really commanded to do, very active 5 times a day worship. So why would Allah command this? Now, these commands and these prohibitions which we are talking about right now, these are very general and they apply to all of society, not just to the believers. As we mentioned a few surahs ago, those 9 commandments, that in those commands that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given, He had given them for all of society, not just for the believers. So these few commandments and prohibitions in this ayah itself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it for everyone who's living in Makkah, and just all of society in general, all of humanity in general. So when he says al-ihsan, al-ihsan is when a person, this is a state of being. A person, they live knowing that God is aware of me. They are aware that God is aware of me. That's it. You are aware that God is watching over me. God knows and He hears and sees all. So I have to make sure I follow His commandments and I stay away from His prohibitions. I have to make sure that I do not infringe on the rights of others. And a person who is cognizant and aware of God, and they are afraid that God will hold me to task. He will hold me accountable for the way that I have live my life. And that person will live, a very upright and just and virtuous life. They will, just because they know that God's going to hold me accountable. That's why, because they know there's a higher power over me, someone who they have everything written down in a book. Other people might not know. My family, my friends, I might do something wrong. They might not ever be aware of it. I might live my entire life and I might have lived a terrible life and nobody would ever know. But God will know about it. God will know. And He will hold me to task. He will hold me accountable. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is warning against that. And He said you should live your life knowing that Allah is watching over you at all times. Okay? And then He says, وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى. وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى. This is giving to those who have qaraba to you, those who have nearness to you. Now, this is, of course, how most scholars, they interpret this as those people who have familial relations to you, people who are your blood relatives in particular, and then, of course, obviously your other, extended family and things like that. According to others, this can also refer to people who have physical proximity to you, people who are close to you in proximity. So neighbors primarily, as well as acquaintances, as well as colleagues, peers, things like that, people you interact with on a daily basis, even if they're not close friends or close family members. Still, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He emphasizes the importance of us, giving them their due right, things that, they have over us. We have to take care of them. There are things that we have to be very aware of when it comes to our relationship with even our neighbors. The Prophet ﷺ, he says in a hadith, he says that, once Jibreel came to me once, and he began to encourage me towards doing good to my neighbor. And he encouraged me towards, treating my neighbor well, to such a degree. He kept on going on and on and on. The Prophet ﷺ says he did it so much that I thought he was going to tell me that, I have to write him in my will. I have to put the neighbor in my will, that he should be my heir. I have to leave something to him. Basically, as if he was my family. He kept emphasizing the importance of just neighbors. So this is, obviously, this is an Islamic paradigm that, it's not just, you live next to somebody for 10 years, you don't even know their name. No, this is not the case. And especially on the Day of Judgment, the person passes away on kufr and shirk. On the Day of Judgment, the person, you and I are walking into Jannah, the person sees us and he says, hey, you knew what the right path was, you knew what was right, you kept doing what was right, and you let me keep doing what was wrong. Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you do something? And that person, they have a right upon us that we should go and tell them, and we should encourage them. That isn't when you just go knock on their door and start giving them copies of the Quran, but you give them a beautiful way of giving da'wah is, of course, it's mentioned even in this surah, and we'll talk a little bit about it, that, showing them Islamic character, showing them Islamic conduct. And this was the primary way the Prophet ﷺ gave da'wah, especially in Mecca. His character, this is the thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeats and He reiterates time and time again. He says to the people, this is a man you've known throughout your entire life. He says that وَمَا صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا صَاحِبُكُمْ, your sahib, the person who's your companion. لَبِثْتُ فِيكُمْ عُمْرًا طَوِيلًا, that I have stayed amongst you for a very, very long time. I used to live, for 40 years I was your companion, and today all of a sudden you have a problem with me. Before you used to call me as-sadiq al-amin, the person who's trustworthy and a righteous person and honest. That's the person you used to call me. So this is also one of the strongest, arguments that we have. Is that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is the man who for 40 years he lived a life of virtue and steadfastness and uprightness, and the person that everyone turned to and everyone sought his help and his opinion. And that person, for him to lie is not just a little bit out of the ordinary. That is completely against what he has been doing for 40 years, how he has lived his life every single day for 40 years. So this is something that the Prophet ﷺ, he established over a very long time, even before Islam came, even before he was given the prophethood. The Prophet ﷺ established a reputation in society as someone who is very, very morally and ethically superior. Obviously in comparison to everyone there, but just in general as well. The Prophet ﷺ is the paragon of all that is virtuous and correct and true. So these are the first three things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to do. And the next three things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us, or He prohibits from. So He commands us to stay away from, basically. So He says, وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَى. The first thing is al-fahsha. Fahsha is that which is immodest or vulgar. Immodest, vulgar, something that is obscene, I think, or explicit, right? Just open and out there, and just gross, right? You see it all over society, you see it all over TV and news and social media, and so it's just disgusting, and it's something that it's abhorrent. You want to stay away, you just want to look away. You're like, oh, what is that? It makes you sick. It's revolting. Okay, so all of these words, I think, kind of really just summarize, the meaning of, وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to stay away from those things. And you and I, we see people like that sometimes, hopefully not in our day-to-day, but we definitely see them, online, or we hear reports about it, or somebody tells us a story, and you're like, oh, how, that's disgusting, or you don't want to see that, or oh, I don't want to see that kind of person, or how can they do something like that? That's fahish. That's something that is, from fahsha, something that is very explicit and vulgar, and something you just want to avoid. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He prohibits that. Next thing He says is wal munkar. Munkar is that which is not known in society, because it's the opposite of ma'ruf. Ma'ruf is that which is common and custom. It's acceptable in society. Munkar is that which is unacceptable. Okay, it's like you see someone doing something, you think, okay, we don't do that here, right? Like, no, that's very unacceptable to be doing in public, or just in our society. We don't do these kinds of things here, not in our country, not, whatever it might be. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He prohibits this. He says you should not do things which, are just looked down upon and frowned upon by the general masses. You should avoid those things as well. And then, wal-baghi. So baghi is, there is, of course, the micro, I guess, example of baghi, and then there's the macro example of baghi. So micro example of baghi would be something that is, trying to think of a very politically correct way of saying this. Basically, prostitution. Okay, prostitution. So al-baghi or baghiyah. This is often this is referred. It refers to a female prostitute. It refers to a female prostitute. So just that act itself. Okay, the act itself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obviously prohibits against that. So something that was rife in Makkah. It's something very common. Fortunately, in the West itself today, it's obviously very common as well. So that's on a micro scale, and then on a macro scale, it refers to transgression, like major transgressions that people will commit against one another. Primarily, like treason or banditry, robbery, these kinds of things. This is absolutely prohibited, where a group of people will assault or attack another group of people. That this kind of mob violence, these kinds of things are absolutely, completely, unequivocally prohibited in our religion, not acceptable at all whatsoever. And I remember there's the story, of course, of Ali radiallahu anhu. He dealt with the Khawarij, and then he was asked about them. He says, what should we do about these people? They're like this and like this. And he says, إخوهم إخواننا بغوا علينا. He says, they are our brothers. Like, they're still Muslim at the end of the day. However, they have committed a serious crime, a serious transgression, where they have oppressed us, and they are transgressing us. They are attacking us and assaulting us. So That is something that Allah has prohibited. Now, if you look at these things, these three things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded justice. He has commanded, living your life knowing that God's watching over you, okay? And taking care of those who have nearness to you in terms of family, obviously, as well as your close associates. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited three things as well. So He has prohibited fahsha, that which is explicit, openly vulgar. And then He has prohibited munkar, that which is looked down upon in society by the general masses, by everyone basically. And then finally, al-baghi. Baghi is, active, like taking steps to do something wrong. Okay, like taking steps and actually doing serious harm, be it on a micro scale to yourself and another person, or on a macro scale, in large groups. Now, these are commands and prohibitions Allah gave in Makkah. So, like I said, this refers to all of society because, Makkans were, obviously most of them were mushrikeen, they were disbelievers, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that this applies to you as well. Your society right now, it looks like it's things are running smoothly, things are running well, but it's not, because you people are not living lives of virtue. You guys are not living, upright, just lives. You guys are engaged in khiyana, you guys are engaged in adultery and theft and injustice and burying your daughters alive, and then there's absolutely no rights were given to women. Even men, you guys are assaulting one another, attacking one another just because you are stronger than him, or you have more political sway or influence than the other person, that you can show injustice and overtake another person's, be they take over their land or take their property, whatever it might be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this is very common and rife in your society, and because the higher ups and the ones who are in power, you guys have so much influence, you can kind of spit out that propaganda. And the lower ones, no matter how much they complain, they will not be able to do anything. They can't overthrow you. You guys have all the resources, all the power, all the wealth, and all of the support as well. So obviously, when Islam came and it advocated for justice and it advocated for equality, then when that happened, the lower ranks in society were the ones who were the quickest to accept Islam, because they said, yes, absolutely, this is what we've been waiting for. We want to see justice. We want to see that people are, taken care of. We want to see that there's, this oppression is done away with. And then the people who are higher up in society, they did not like that. They didn't like this message, so they did not want to engage in, all of the. So they didn't like that. Obviously, the higher ups in society didn't like that because, we can't keep doing the things that we're doing. We have to, the status quo is no longer the status quo. So we have to, basically Islam came to break that system that these people had placed in position, and that they had abused and, misused to their benefit for a very long time. And Islam came to crush that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, enough of this oppression and evil that you have been committing. Now you must do good. Now you must do justice. Be it, amongst yourselves or upon yourselves, even if you have to, go to court against yourself, against your family, against your close friends, do it. Okay, no more of this, well, he's my friend, or she's this, or he's that, so let's let it slide. No more of that. This is completely unacceptable. Not just in Islam, but just in a cohesive, functioning, harmonious society as well. Another verse I wanted to speak about was verse 98. So in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. So this is quite short, and this is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again. So He says, so when you read the Quran, so if you, so فَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ, so this is a command for you and I. If you read the Quran, when you read the Quran, then فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. Seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, protection Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from shaitan. So do a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Do this when you read the Quran, when you engage in recitation of the Quran. Now, obviously the general, the literal meaning that you and I can take of it is to say a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim before you begin reading the Quran, or before you begin your salah, right? Like as soon as you begin the salah, this is one of the first things that you say before you begin recitation in your salah, tilawah. So that's obviously there. But there's also, that whole, the mentality that a person must get into. Okay, so, ta'awudh is not just, okay, I have to say Bismillah, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I just have to. Okay, why do I have to do that? Like, why are you saying a'udhu billah, you're reading like the most, sacred book in the world, you're reading the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the speech of Allah, and yet you're seeking protection from shaitan? Where's shaitan in here? This is the word of Allah. So, there is obviously, this is a very, very deep statement, and this is a practice that every believer is engaged in. All of us, we do this every single day. We say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Every single day, all of us do this. So, why? Why? And especially why when it comes to reading the Quran. And there's a lengthy discussion on it. We'll just take on a couple of very, important points, I think. One of them primarily is that, the Quran is, yes, it's beautiful. Yes, there's so much to it. And yes, it's simple in many parts, but it's also quite complex in others. And it can get sometimes very daunting, to try and understand other parts of it. To try and go into the depth of it. Sometimes it can be a real mission, and it can be very, very, very difficult. It can be very difficult, honestly. For a layperson, it's in not all parts, but definitely there are certain parts which they'll read it and they'll think that, well, this doesn't make sense. And that's absolutely acceptable. It's fine. It's not like, you and I, all of us have to have that very high level of understanding where we can just open the book and just completely understand, oh, well, that's exactly what Allah wants. Yeah, I totally get it. No, that's not going to happen, unfortunately. And that's perfectly fine. When that happens, we فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. We go to those people who know. We go to the people of remembrance. Those people who, just, we talk about, okay, who is أهل الذِّكْر? فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْر, the people of knowledge, or the people of remembrance, who are those people? If you want to, just think about those people who have true, sincere, unadulterated knowledge of Islam. Honestly, the people who have the true knowledge of Islam and the true deen in their lives, and you see that person, you think that, I don't have any doubt that this person, he knows his faith, or she knows her faith. That's it. Not that, the person, they have, their own biases, or that the person is going to come in with their, well, let me, see what my PhD can tell me. No, the person just has a clean and pure fitrah. The person's nature is something that has not been diluted. That person's, the human nature that person has, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created them with. It has not been polluted by everything that is around them. That person, that's a person that you can sit down and you can speak to them when it comes to the Quran of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it comes to the deen of Allah. Sit down and just talk to them about it and just see, That person doesn't have to tell you this is halal, this is haram, do this, don't do this. No, just, try and understand the Quran from that person. That's it. Again, I'm not saying that you should go to that person and ask them for complex, fiqh and Islamic rulings of what is permissible, what is impermissible. Not like that. But just when it comes to understanding, and you feel that I'm being confused or I'm being misled or pulled astray or here and there, and this is exactly what Shaitan will do. This is what Shaitan will do, especially when it comes to you and I turning towards the Quran. When you and I turn towards the Quran, this is the time when Shaitan will try to pull you away from it. Shaitan doesn't care about the people who are in the clubs and the pubs and the nightclubs and all that stuff. Why would he care about that? Those people are already lost and misguided. Shaitan doesn't bother with them. Shaitan bothers with you and I. People who are sitting here, with the mushaf open, who are reading and learning, who are listening, all these things. These are the people that Shaitan is really, these are his targets. Because he thinks that, okay, this person is trying to get back on the right path. They're trying to get to God. I got to make sure that they can't do that. So this is what that person that Shaitan will actively hone in on, and he will try to take them off the right path. He even says, that he tells Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm going to sit on the straight path. So Shaitan does not sit on, misled and misguided path. He will just, show someone the wrong direction, and the person will keep going in that wrong direction. Then he will leave him. He'll say, okay, moving on. Let's go to the person who's on the right path. And then the Shaitan will come to you. Then he will say that actually, I think you should turn left, or maybe turn right. Maybe go this way. Maybe go that way. Maybe turn around. And what will he use? He will use the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He will use salah, he will use different books of knowledge, and he will use people of knowledge. He will use all these things that he has available to him to misguide you and to lead you astray. So when we feel something like that is happening, this is where we seek protection in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when you open this book and then you see that, hey, you know what, there are some things that I can't grasp, I can't understand, I find this is confusing, why is this okay, why is that not okay? So things like that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first thing you do is you should seek protection in Allah from Shaitan. That's the first thing. And after you do that, then go into the book, go into the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, read it, try to understand it. And if you cannot, and you and I, all of us, we will fall, definitely will fall short in completely understanding the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should go to those people who have knowledge. We should go to those people, number one, who have a fitrah, like I mentioned, who have a soul that has not been polluted by the evils and the vices of everything around them. That, and then of course, when we want to get an understanding of the rulings of things that Allah wants us to do, He wants us to avoid, we should go to our scholars. We should go to those people who have knowledge, those people who have spent years and years and years locked up in a room just studying and understanding the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those are the people that we should turn to, and we should ask them for an explanation. Okay, please, explaining to me the rulings, why Allah wants me to do this, why He doesn't want me to do this. And then obviously those other people who are maybe, they haven't spent all their time just, studying, but those are people who have, like I mentioned, they have, a fitrah, they have a human nature that has not been polluted. That person is not, been corrupted. Sometimes you just want to sit with those people and just say that, just talk about Islam, just talk about anything, talk about God, talk about life, talk about whatever it might be. And this is something that, you do just to kind of ground yourself, just to center yourself and say, understand that, okay, this person, they have deen, they have religion, and yet they're not, so befuddled, and they're not, very frayed at the edges, and they're not completely lost and losing their way. How is that the case? So you sit with that person, and then, inshallah, you will find your way back. Another verse I really wanted to kind of talk about a little bit was 112. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us an example. Okay, so He subhanahu wa ta'ala, now this is of course, one of the greatest ways of teaching lessons and morals and things like that is by way of telling stories. You tell a story, okay, so what's the moral of the story? What are the lessons that we can derive from it? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does so here. He says, وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا. Allah has given us a method, an example. Okay, so what's that example? قَرِيَةً كَانَتْ آمِنَةً. So he says that there used to be a village or a town, and that town lived in complete security and peace. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says they lived in peace. مُطْمَئِنَّةً. That, they had complete sakina, they had complete contentment, everyone was relaxed, it wasn't a place there's not crime, they weren't worried about, attacks from enemies, they weren't, everything was going great for them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَأْتِيهَا رِزْقُهَا رَغَدًا مِنْ كُلِّ مَكَانٍ. And He subhanahu wa ta'ala says that its sustenance, its risk, it used to come from everywhere. Basically, they were taken care of in ways that you and I can't even imagine. Right? They were just chilling. The people, they didn't have to worry about drought, they didn't have to worry about famine, nothing. Everything was taken care of. And then He says that, فَكَفَرَتْ بِأَنْعُمِ اللَّهِ. However, this village, and obviously now, the literal word فَكَفَرَتْ, as in the village itself, it doesn't refer to the town or the village, but it refers to the people living in the village, okay? So, these people who are living in that village, they did kufr. Now this is not, if you remember, this is not kufr of disbelief. This is not that kufr. This is kufr in regards to blessings of Allah. Kufranu ni'mah, where a person is ungrateful. They show ingratitude towards the blessings that Allah has given them. And this is the first thing that shaitan will make a person do. This is the first thing that shaitan will make a person do. He will make that person ungrateful. When shaitan makes you ungrateful, how does he do this? He makes you think that you have whatever you have because of your own ability. Okay, you have a nice laptop. Well, yeah, you got that because you worked hard, because you're so smart, because you're this, because you're capable, because of all of these things. Yeah, God didn't give this. I did this, it's all me. It's my knowledge, it's my this, it's my that. However, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's us turning away from the blessings of Allah and then thinking that, okay, I did it. Well, if I did it, and I'm able to do all of these for myself, why do I have to worship God? Why do I have to make dua? Why do I have to sit there and ask God for this or ask God for that? I don't need to do any of that. Everything's taken care of. I did it all by myself. So that's what shaitan will do. First thing he will do is he'll make a person ungrateful. That ingratitude will eventually, he's not going to ask you to go and make sajda to a statue made of gold. Shaitan will make you first, he will make you ungrateful. And then eventually his end goal is that he will make you fall into disbelief. Even if you and I pray 5 times a day, we get up for tahajjud. First thing shaitan will do is try to make us ungrateful for something that we have in our lives. And then eventually we will leave even our 5 daily prayers. Even we'll leave that. So this is the goal of shaitan. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that فَكَفَرَتْ بِأَنْعُمِ اللَّهِ. So these people, they began to show كُفْرَانُ النِّعْمَةِ. They were ungrateful, they showed ingratitude towards the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How? Very simple, the person becomes content. And they think that, yeah, this is all, life is great, we're just chilling, that's it, everything is great, and when things are going so well, then you and I, we don't really feel that need to worship God. Unfortunately, that's the reality, because, we don't need things, it's no longer, my needs have all been met, and most of my wants have also been met. If that's the case, and I'm just relaxing, and I'm not, I'm not stressing about anything, I'm not worrying about anything, and the person is really, really relaxed, in that time, then that person does not need to turn towards God, because they think that, what do I need to ask God for something? When a calamity befalls us, when a hardship comes upon us, that's when we turn towards God. Allah, I need your help. Allah, I need this. Allah, I need this. Allah, I need this. That's when a person is really, really become very pious, and they become very understanding and connected towards God. At that moment, when things become tough, But when everything is relaxed, then the person becomes very lazy. They don't pray as much. They don't do as much dhikr. They don't really read Quran. They won't, they're going to avoid the masjid. They won't go to the masjid that much because things are going well. All of a sudden, the guy loses his job, or the sister, she hurts herself. Oh, okay, now all of a sudden I gotta go back towards, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you start praying to Allah, please, I need a job. Oh, Allah, please, I need, mend my arm that I hurt, or blah, blah, whatever it might be, So we turn towards Allah when a difficulty befalls us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this village, this town, they had all these things were going great for them. Everything was going great for them. And as a result, what happened? These people, they became content. And not only that, but they started showing ingratitude towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَأَذَاقَهُ اللَّهُ لِبَاسَ الْجُوعِ وَالْخَوْفِ بِمَا كَانُوا يَصْنَعُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look at this, is a very, very powerful phrase. And He subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them a taste. Okay, how did He give them a taste? That He made them wear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them لِبَاسَ الْجُوعِ وَالْخَوْفِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took away. Look what He took away. He took away the food that He had given them. Remember we said that Allah has given them rizqha, from its sustenance. It came from everywhere. Allah said we took that away. We gave them hunger. Not only that, Allah said that this was qaryatan aminatan. This was a village or a town that was in peace. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we filled them with fear. Now they were afraid, someone might come attack us, or people will be afraid in their own homes. People are afraid of enemies coming from outside, or people even in your own city. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we took away their sustenance and we took away their peace and safety. And what did we do? We gave them clothes. We clothed upon them the fear of hunger and the fear of just fear in general, of fear for your safety, I guess, fear for your life. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, now this is not literal clothes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them, but it's as if you're wearing clothing. You know how it's like sticking to your skin, it's just on you at all times. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this was upon you at all times. Hunger was upon them at all times. Like clothing is always upon you. Okay, so we don't take our clothes off except for very, very short amounts of time. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that hunger was always upon them, except for a few moments when they would eat, they will be full, but then they will be hungry again, just like your clothes are always on you. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the same way for fear, al-khawf. So they were always afraid. Maybe they might have some peace and safety for a few moments, but then they would be afraid again. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He gave them this punishment because these people, they showed ingratitude towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give this example? Why did He give this example when the Prophet was in Mecca? Why did He give it in Mecca? So the people of Mecca, if you look at لِإِلَافِ قُرَيْشٍ, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say لِإِلَافِ قُرَيْشٍ? He talks about what He has given the tribe of Quraysh, who are the dominant tribe living in Mecca at the time. لِإِلَافِ قُرَيْشٍ إِلَافِهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ الَّذِي أَطْعَمَهُم مِّن جُوعٍ وَآمَنَهُم مِّن خَوْفٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He has protected you from al-ju' and al-khawf. He has protected you from hunger, and He has protected you from fear. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk about here? That He gave this other village and this other town, He gave them libas al-ju'i wal-khawf. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we gave them all of these things, and they were living in luxury. They were completely content with the way that life was, and as a result they turned away from Allah. They were ungrateful. So we took that away, and we filled them with fear, and we filled them with poverty and hunger. And then this is a warning to you that if you don't turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now, because we have given you these same things, do you want to go in the way that this town also went? Because we'll do the same thing to you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is warning them very strongly in this. And of course, unfortunately, that's what came to pass. That is exactly what came to pass regarding the people of Mecca, because the vast majority of them did not accept Islam, at least until Fath Makkah, and they were punished. They were living in comfort and luxury for a long time. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested them with poverty, He tested them with hunger, He tested them with battles and wars and things like that, that they suffered the consequences as a result. Because Allah said, we gave you all of these things and then you turned away from us? Okay, now we're going to give you these things to turn back towards us. And then one final verse that I wanted to speak about was verse 125. So I think I mentioned earlier that most of this surah was revealed in Makkah, but there were some parts that might have been, or at least one or two verses that were definitely revealed in Medina. The Prophet was living in Medina. So one of those verses, according to some scholars, is verses 125 and 126. So this is at the very end of the surah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasana." And then He subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives a few commands in this surah to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and obviously by extension to you and I, when He says that, okay, give da'wah. give da'wah. So through this, just this verse itself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives, a very, very, very beautiful guideline of how to give da'wah. And if I, started talking about that, that would take another like an hour to talk about da'wah itself, the etiquettes of giving da'wah, etc. But we won't get into that right now. But this was for the Prophet ﷺ. So he says that he subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them a command. Okay, call towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with wisdom and give, and a good warning. Yeah, definitely warn them, kind of scare them, but in a pleasant way, not just so much so that they run away from you and don't want to talk to you. And then he subhanahu wa ta'ala says, okay, if they want to debate with you and argue with you, وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, then definitely you should argue with them and debate with them in a way that is proper and appropriate, not fighting them and screaming and until everyone gets red in the face and it's like two tomatoes are going at it. Don't do that. إِنَّ رَبَّكَ هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنْ ضَلَّ عَنْ سَبِيلِهِ وَهُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِالْمُهْتَدِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you don't need to go about separating between groups of people. Allah already knows who's lost and who is guided. Allah knows. You just do your job. Your job is to try and bring everyone to the right path. But at the end of the day, Allah will know all of that. And then he subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِنْ أَعْقَبْتُمْ فَعَاقِبُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا أُوقِبْتُمْ بِهِ وَلَئِنْ صَبَرْتُمْ لَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لِلصَّابِرِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you believers have to attack, then you should attack only to the extent that you are attacked. Okay, so you should have a proportionate response in whatever you do. وَلَئِنْ صَبَرْتُمْ, but if you have sabr, basically if people attack you, they're unjust to you, and then you decide that I'm going to let it go. I'm going to let it go, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, then that is better. It is better that you actually let it go, that you have sabr. وَاصْبِرْ وَمَا صَبْرُكَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. And have sabr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is a command. He says, okay, and have sabr. But remember, your sabr that you have is it comes from Allah. Allah has given you that ability to have steadfastness and to be, strong in your faith. وَلَا تَحْزَنْ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا تَكُ فِي ضَيْقٍ مِّمَّا يَمْكُرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not grieve over them. So this is a command to the Prophet ﷺ. Don't grieve over these people. Don't be distressed by whatever makr they have. Makr is like a scheme or an evil plot or a plan that people have. So scholars, like I said, they say that this was revealed in Medina, and this was most likely revealed right after the events of Uhud, right after Uhud. So we know that the Muslims, though they won the Battle of Badr, the Muslims did not engage in any type of war crimes. They didn't engage in mutilation of bodies and things like that. But the people of Mecca did. And they, like we said, they were savage people. To be perfectly honest, the people who were living in Mecca at that time, definitely they were furious. They were angry that the believers had defeated them in Badr, and they found that humiliating, and they wanted to leave a lasting mark and an impression on them. So they engaged in savagery and barbarian tactics. So they engaged in something known as muthla. Muthla is mutilation of bodies. And of course, the most famous example is Hamza radiallahu anhu. Hamza radiallahu anhu's body was mutilated. There are many Sahaba, not just Hamza radiallahu anhu. There were other Sahaba as well. And according to reports, over 70 Sahaba passed away in that battle. Over 70 Sahaba passed away. And many of them, they had their bodies mutilated and cut up, and they looked, unfortunately, in a very bad state, in very bad shape after the battle. So this really angered the believers, and it really hurt them. Obviously, the Prophet ﷺ is a human being, so he definitely felt that, and he was angry, very upset about this. So he made a promise. He said that, because they have done this to 70 of our believers, we will kill 70 of them. Basically, when the next battle comes, then we will get our we'll get our revenge on them. We will give them a proportionate response. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them, okay, if you are going to punish the people, then it is permissible for you to punish them, but you should do so only in a manner that is proportionate and equal. Don't if somebody slaps you, don't punch them in the stomach or something like that. Okay, so I'm not saying that go around doing that, but whatever you do, you should don't overstep your bounds. Even though Sharia, even though our religion definitely gives you some leeway that if somebody hurts you, then you do have some room to get your due justice. You definitely do. So the Prophet ﷺ, he made a promise. He said that I'm going to. We as believers, because the believers are very hurt and very angry when this happened. So he said, okay, we're definitely going to do this. We are going to get those people back for what they have done. We're not going to engage in muthla, we're not going to engage in mutilation, but we will get those people who have killed our family and friends, and they have mutilated their bodies. We will get our justice for them. However, the believers, they did not really meet with the mushrikeen of Makkah. They didn't meet with them on the battlefield like this again. So Badr and Uhud were those two big battles where they met with them, on a clear open battle, and they duked it out. But it didn't really happen to that extent or like that in any of the other battles the Prophet ﷺ fought with them. There was no such similarity or no comparable battle as there were with as we had Badr and Uhud, which were an open battlefield. We didn't have that in other battles with the Prophet ﷺ, so he didn't have the option or the opportunity to really do that until the Prophet ﷺ went into Mecca. When the Prophet went into Mecca with the believers, this was 5 years later, when the believers went into Mecca and they were victorious, the Prophet ﷺ, as he went in, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he had revealed these verses upon him, and Nabi ﷺ, he thought about this, and rather than enact that revenge, because he had made a promise, remember, he had made an oath that I'm going to do this. But when he was going into Makkah and the people were in the condition they were, Nabi ﷺ let it go. So this is, if you and I, we take an oath, we say like, Wallahi or Billahi, I'm going to do this, by Allah, I'm going to do this, but then we don't end up doing that thing. Okay, what should you and I do in that case? So the Prophet ﷺ, he decided not to go ahead and punish those people and kill them. He said, no, I'm going to forgive them instead. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he even says that, wasbir, and have patience. Just be, patient, and it's better for you to be patient. And that's exactly what the Prophet ﷺ does. He exercises patience, and as a result, of course, what happened? All of those people of Mecca became Muslim, right? All the people of Mecca, they all entered into Islam. Many of them had fought with the Muslims, even against them on the battle of during the battle of Badr, during the battle of Uhud. So those people, they eventually accepted Islam. If Nabi ﷺ had started, putting all those people to the sword, would Islam have spread the way that it did? Absolutely not. And Nabi ﷺ didn't do that. So this is, of course, that da'wah, the appropriate way of giving da'wah. So Nabi ﷺ gave it in a very beautiful way, even though he was hurting inside. And we'll finish, inshallah, with the very last verse of the surah, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ مُحْسِنُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed Allah is with those who have taqwa, who have God consciousness, who are aware of Allah, and those people who are muhsin. Muhsin is a person, like I said, who lives his life knowing that God is watching over him, God is always aware of him. So this is the second to last verse of this surah, and it encourages us to do taqwa, or to do good, obviously, and to have taqwa. And the second verse of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يُنَزِّلُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ بِالرُّوحِ مِنْ أَمْرِهِ عَلَى مَنْ يَشَاءُ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ أَنْ أَنذِرْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا فَاتَّقُونَ. So I'm just going to skip over all of that until the very end. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, have taqwa. So the second ayah of this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, have taqwa, or have taqwa of me. And then in the second to last ayah of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also encourages to have taqwa for the believers. So these are, I only spoke about, towards just a few verses at the very end of the surah. And throughout the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he brings very, very beautiful, very powerful examples for you and I to really take heed of. It's kind of a difficult thing to do now that we live in, these concrete jungles, unfortunately. But alhamdulillah, we're fortunate that we live in this state, at least, and there's a lot of nature, a lot of beauty out here. So inshallah, when the opportunity arises again, we should definitely go outside and just get away from everything that is metal and plastic and has a screen and artificial light coming out of it. Go back to nature, go back to all of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made available for you and I. And to take that into account and take heed of that and understand that all of these things are fulfilling their purpose, what they were created for in life. They do what they're exactly what they are born to do. So what is it that you and I are born to do? What is it that you and I are created to do? And are we fulfilling that purpose? Are we doing what we are supposed to be doing? Because that is what is natural. And are we doing, and unfortunately, our lives, we are living them very unnaturally. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, especially in this month of Ramadan, may He give us the ability to go back to that nature, go back to that fitrah, and what we have been created upon, that true innate feeling that we have within, deep down under all of this the corruption that this dunya has unfortunately piled upon us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to rediscover that and to turn towards Him sincerely. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.